So, Craig, how was camping? I hear you went to the same campground we went to.
Oh man, I feel like I'm saying the same thing, but it's okay. I have a
Read your
love-hate
script.
relationship with camping because I personally enjoy camping, but I hate camping with kids. And I just because like you want to like enjoy the outdoors, you want to have a campfire going, and you kind of want to just sit there and enjoy like the embers and like the fire. You want to cook some hot dogs, put a marshmallow in there, make it nice and crunchy. But then you got your delinquent kids just running around trying to like put things into the fire, get close to the fire, and like they don't go to bed till like 10 o'clock, so you can't even enjoy camping until like you've drugged them or something, and then they go to sleep.
Did you bring Dramamine? You were like, take some of these yummy
Oh,
candies, kids.
I did, yeah. We
Wow.
brought some melatonin, and I was like,
Oh,
yeah, man.
melatonin,
And they're
nice.
like, I'm feeling pretty sleepy. It's like, oh yeah, man, you better get to bed.
Oh, funny.
So
So Herbert's
this
here
is
and he
funny.
says we've got sound. So hooray!
Awesome.
Hopefully
That's great.
Yay!
Yay!
So yeah, so I don't know if I told you this, Brenna, but we went camping a few weeks ago, and then
Oh, and let's just
well,
say, to have some solidarity with Craig, it was on the worst day of like, I have like some mental illness, and like it was on one of my very 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 low mental illness days, and we went anyway, and so like most of the time we were
Oh.
like, don't murder the children.
That sounds
We will
rough.
enjoy the nature.
did you see what Herbert said? He says, "Nevermore."
What?
Nevermore.
Nevermore.
There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
The old
So
school
wait,
Red
you're
Raven
saying something
podcast
about-
teams back together.
Yay!
So we went
The
camping,
reunion.
Brenna, at this place up in the canyon, and then I
Yeah.
see a few weeks later, I see Craig posting pictures
Of like
of
the
this
campfire fire pit. We're like,
the exact
that
same
fire
place
pit
we
looks
were at.
familiar. The
There
number,
is.
the number out of 99 campsites, they were on the same number of campsite that we had been at.
It's destiny.
Yeah. So when we were there, this moose was like right outside our tent all night.
A moose?
Yeah. Like,
There are mooses in Utah?
yeah. Big and
I
kind of
believe
scary.
It's moosin.
Yeah.
Moosin.
Moosin? Meese? There are meese in
Meeson.
Utah?
There were moose.
Yeah. It sat there eating all night. I could hear it out there chomping. And we couldn't even get out to go to the bathroom because he was standing like right there.
That's wild. Yeah,
Okay,
that's why I stay in my house all the time. No moose can get me here.
That's true.
you think we're gonna go get some antlers and like sneak up at your window and like
I'm on the second floor, so good luck with that.
It's a very tall moose.
That would be pretty freaky if you managed to get tall enough to be visible through my window.
That reminds me, in my old job, we had this fake deer that somebody had bought for like archery target practice.
yeah.
And we used to hide it like in different places to scare people. So we would put it in the bathroom, like a bathroom stall. And then somebody would open it up and see it there and like
Deer head.
deer head.
That's hilarious. My when I lived in like a shared house for 1 year in college, all of my housemates would do that with a cardboard cutout of like one of the Jonas Brothers. So they would just hide around different places.
Was it Nick?
I honestly don't remember.
So,
Not that I know the Jonas Brothers
It
by
never successfully scared me, so no one bothered trying after a while. They just all tried to scare each other, and I would just like open my shower and see the cardboard cutout there and be like, guess I gotta move this out of the way now.
So really quick, we got just a little comment about the balance. So anybody listening, do you guys want to comment again about mic balance, or should we just get going?
I
Do
can
we need
turn
to
myself.
turn Brenna's mic up? And Alyssa's back, Herbert's back, Chad's back. We got all repeat offenders. So, welcome to the podcast reunion. How's the sound?
Yes.
It's
So,
silent.
why don't we start out by talking about, let's each talk about one game that we want to highlight. And it can be...
It's in early access right now, but it's kind of like a roguelike deck builder. So you're like building decks, and you have two different decks that you're building. One is a combat deck, and the other is a conversation deck. And they each have slightly different mechanics for how they work. So when you go into like an encounter in the game, you can choose most of the time to either like try to fight people or to try to argue with them. And depending on which one you do, there's a different deck you use that has like different mechanics for how the essentially battling system works, because the debates are also essentially battles. But as you win these encounters, you get more stuff you can add to your deck, and it's very sort of like story focused. So it's got this whole campaign story where it's like this sort of gritty sci-fi setting, and at least one of the characters you can play as, you're like a bounty hunter trying to get revenge. And it's kind of interesting how the story is also dynamic, because you can make friends with different people, or depending on your choices to like fight or argue, or like whether you choose to kill people or spare them, like they might show up later down the line and either help you out or make things worse for you. And also depending on who you've made friends with or enemies with, you get certain sort of like blanket bonuses or detriments to like your character. And then, yes, it's a roguelike, so it's run-based. So if you die, you can start over again, and there's stuff that you unlock for future campaigns, which I actually think that the whole card-based battle and discussion system is really cool and fun. But it's kind of weirdly balanced for a roguelike, because like I did one run, I beat it my first time, so I didn't even die my first run through, and also it took 7 hours. Which to me, 7 hours is too long for a single run in a roguelike. If it's a roguelike where you're going to be dying, it should be like an hour or two for a run at most. So honestly, I think it would be a better game if they took out the roguelike elements and just made it a straight campaign. But I actually really like the deck building stuff. And I'm usually not that into deck builders. So it in a way kind of got me more interested in the mechanic of deck building than I have been before.
That's funny, because yesterday we were talking about deck builders, and now you're like, deck builders, but I'm kind of interested.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. Thanks for your game recommendations. So yeah, I agree. Brenna always has very unique game recommendations.
Yeah. So when you mentioned this game, I immediately went and bought it.
Oh, nice.
Because I love roguelike games, and I think it's really fun. It's great. I love so you have two decks, and I love that one deck is like your negotiation deck. So you're not fighting people, you're like trying to convince them. Mm-hmm. That was really interesting.
Yeah, the first time I played, I went really heavy on the negotiation deck, and like the way it works is if you fight, you can kind of upgrade your fight deck, and if you negotiate, you can upgrade your negotiation deck. So when you go heavily to one towards the other, there's one that gets way better than the other one. But then when you get to that final encounter on that first run, you have to fight. That's the only option. So I kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit by focusing too much on negotiation. So I actually died in the boss fight the first time, but the first time you die in a run, it lets you restart the day instead of restarting the whole run. So when I restarted that one day, I managed to actually beat the boss fight on my second go around, so I didn't have to redo the whole run. Yeah. But yeah.
Repeat the name of the game for the people who have just joined.
It's called Griftlands. That's Grift lands.
Yeah, it feels very much influenced by Slay the Spire.
Oh, big time.
And Chad wants you to describe what you mean by a roguelike.
So, yeah, go ahead, Brenna.
Yeah, so a roguelike in a video game essentially just means it's a really difficult game that's you're intended to like die in and then like restart. So like it's not a game that you're supposed to start and play and then just finish it and it's a one-off thing. You're supposed to like start it and die and then restart and then like maybe have unlocked some stuff from your previous run and then probably die again and then like just kind of keep trying to like go against that wall again and again until you manage to get past it, which is why Griftlands is slightly strangely balanced for a roguelike, because it is possible to beat it on your first run, but like the idea of it is that you're like going against this really difficult gauntlet again and again.
The thing that surprised me most is how much story was in it.
Oh yeah, it's very story heavy.
Yeah, it's not really very common for games like that.
I think that's part of why the runs take so long, is because I guess probably on like a second run through or something it would be shorter because you'd be skipping a lot more of the dialogue because you've already seen it, but yeah, the story stuff definitely takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Oh, would Meat Boy be a roguelike game?
No.
I think technically no, because there has to be a sort of random element of it seems like roguelikes are designed around they're very much like board games. Like you get a random assortment of abilities and see how you do. You know, a lot of board games are like that.
Yeah, because the idea behind a roguelike is that when you start like a new game or a new session, it's supposed to be different from your previous event. Whereas like if you play like a story-based game like a Final Fantasy, you know, like the princess gets captured every time you start the beginning of the game. Whereas a roguelike, the beginning of like the first like dungeon or whatever, it's never going to be the same as you have encountered on previous games.
Right.
Okay. Marta
Are there
says
any- oh, yeah.
dungeon crawler without almost any story and without save points. That goes at least for video games. Also solo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Are there any questions we've missed? Or
No, I mean,
comments?
Chad was talking about animal pranks, but other than that, he's describing some with snakes and SpaghettiOs, so...
Oh.
Anyway,
gosh.
it's a fun one. Read it if you want to see the whole story. Joe says Banners of Ruin looks pretty neat, kind of like...
That's actually a new roguelike deck builder game that just came out on the 30th. And looking through the artwork, it looks pretty cool. It looks like it's very influenced by like Redwall, where it's like animals in like a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
And the
that
artwork's
sounds pretty neat.
pretty fantastic. I'm gonna link it into the chat.
Very cool.
Nice.
Okay.
So,
Craig?
Yeah, I'll
Game you been
talk.
playing?
So I've got this cute role playing system that I've been playing for a while that I always like to bring up. It's called The Burning Wheel. Basically, it's a more like narrative, like RPG based system where like when you play like D&D, like 5th edition or like 3rd edition or Pathfinder, it's very combat based, where the object is to go through like a dungeon, level up, and like improve your equipment, your expertise as a combatter or a magician. Whereas with like Burning Wheel, you have like skills that you develop like as like with like trades or like when it comes to like conversation, and you get better at those like skills, and there's combat in it, but you get better at it as you do it more and more often. And it's not something whereas like if you're like a class, you have to like build around those specific skills that you develop as like a paladin or as a warrior. You could just be like a normal person, and your life path that you develop as your character, like you can become like a peasant that slowly like morphs into like a scientist, but you can do these different skills and like create your own path. And the more often you try to do something, you get more expertise in that skill. It's just a really interesting and more fun system, because like I love D&D, but it's always nice to have like a more narrative based role-playing session, and the Burning Wheel is fantastic for that type of, like, if you're wanting to have a more narrative. It is. Torchbearer is awesome. It's very much like a great narrative focused role-playing system, and I've been playing with a group that's been doing the Burning Wheel for about a year or so, and it's really, really fun. Yeah, so check it out.
Yeah,
It's cute.
you know, I love RPGs that are more narrative focused, so that sounds great to me.
Yeah, it's fun.
So let's see.
I was gonna say that sounds like something Brenna would like.
Yeah, definitely up my alley. I actually haven't heard of it before though, so I'll have to check it out.
Chad says the Geek Nights podcast guys love Burning Wheel.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Let's see. Herbert asks about Acria City. He's like, wonder what that's for. So tell us a little about what you're painting before we continue with the podcast discussion.
So I am painting the board for a game called Exile. And this game has gone through a lot of changes, and it's going through a lot more changes. Brenna actually recently played it, but the version she played is getting some overhaul. Some big overhauls. So she's probably looking
that doesn't surprise me so much.
Yeah, she's probably looking at it kind of wondering what's going on here, but yeah, it's a new land. It's not necessarily, it's not set in Arzium like some of our other games. It's kind of a new setting, and this is one of the little places on the map.
Okay, so let's see. Alyssa asks, the other day you mentioned you were all playing some RPGs. Do you think you'll ever stream any of your campaigns? We don't technically have an RPG group, the four of us. Have we ever? Like all four of us on a campaign before?
No, we haven't, but that sounds fun.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Random question, Ryan, do you think you'll ever venture into VR gaming? And perhaps just a short storyline. Your art is incredible and would look amazing in a 3D world.
Well, thank you. That would be fun, but I think I probably would need to learn a little bit about... It seems intimidating to jump into, not knowing much about video game development. So, but I agree, that would be awesome.
So, Ryan, game you want to highlight?
Let's talk about a game that Craig and I played. It's been quite a while ago, but it was... is that City? What is that game that we played, Craig? City of the Big Shoulders?
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, let me bust that out.
So this was a really...
like months ago.
It is, and so I'm sorry to bring it up. So I might be forgetting some things. But I remember really liking it. It had a stock element in it where you had to sort of control different companies. Yeah, there it is. And I remember it was a bit, you did a good job teaching it, but there were a lot of things to learn in the game, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I remember it had some elements of Puerto Rico in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, Puerto Rico is a game I always enjoy. So, yeah,
it's cool. So actually, they made a web browser. There's a new like web browsing like system where you can play board games, and they actually put City of Big Shoulders on that system. I wish I could find it. Let me look on their Twitter account because they just posted about it a while ago.
So here's a question I have. Have any of you tried, because of the current world situation, have you found yourself playing more games digitally with people? Like tabletop games, maybe RPGs where you have to play over Zoom or over Skype or Discord, using Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of tabletop simulator games with a group of people that we usually try to do like a board game night once a month, but obviously now it's been fairly difficult. So we've been using Tabletop Simulator to play a lot of those games, and it's fun, but it's like it's still not the same. There's that there's that component, that social component that's missing. It's frustrating, and I think when it comes to like intimate settings, I think it's possible to do it, because like when we started doing the tabletop simulators like early on with COVID, when we didn't really knew a whole lot about it, and it was very early as far as like people like staying home, and now like it's interesting because I see a lot of people actually they're starting to get out and to do more like public gaming I guess the last couple of months. But yeah, like we've been doing a lot of tabletop simulators for a lot of games, and it's nice, but it's also kind of frustrating because you're missing that fun interpersonal side of the board gaming perspective. But
so Ryan Clements says Board Game Arena has City on the Big Shoulders, and that was the one I was going to mention because I know that at least one of our games is up on there.
Nice.
Alyssa says, I just miss messing with components. She's done some online gaming. I agree, because Ryan and I tried to playtest Exile on Tabletopia.
Using,
and I did miss, I just missed holding the cards and moving the meeples.
I do too, and one problem with a game like that, it's a kind of complex game. The game takes twice as long.
Yeah.
And it can get kind of difficult playing. I think some games work better than others. You know, that one there were so many components to move around that it didn't seem like it worked quite as well as maybe some other things would, where you don't have to constantly move little tokens and cards and stuff like that.
Yeah. I haven't done any online gaming yet. Like, I don't even really play video games with other people online very much. Although just earlier, like my family both, like my siblings who I live with and my siblings who still live over with my parents at my parents' house, like to play tabletop RPGs. And one of the campaigns that my dad has going with the siblings over at his house is like this pirate system that like is kind of based around Pathfinder, but also kind of has some made up mechanics of his own. Like there's different like pirate stats that everyone has, like swashbuckling, salt, and sea legs are like special pirate stats. But I have appeared before in that game as an NPC named Captain Ironsides, I was just in one of their games. And so my dad was just tweeting today about how they've been talking again about wanting to get back to that campaign, and they're like, oh, I wish Brenna could come over to reprise her role as Captain Ironsides. So I told him they should just call me on the phone while they're playing, and then I can shout from a distance, which will recreate basically what my character was doing before anyway. Just shouting dramatic pirate one-liners from off-screen.
Awesome.
So that would be pretty fun, I think.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just a lot of comments about what it's like to play online. So, yeah.
Oh, actually, Craig, just based on your comment in there, I actually have been playing Animal Crossing, and I've played that online with friends quite a bit, especially when it first came out.
Yeah.
Like, we'd get huge groups of people over to one person's island for, like, the big meteor showers and stuff. That's always fun.
That seems like that's been like the pandemic game of choice. I see people playing.
Yeah, it
that
really
so
is.
much.
Animal Crossing.
It's funny because I own it and my daughter played it quite a bit, but I haven't even touched it.
Oh, that is hilarious.
So.
Yeah, I've kind of fallen off of it now myself, but I have a hard time maintaining extended interest in Animal Crossing games, frankly.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if this is like me feeling too old, but I feel like because time is so limited, and like when I was younger, I would play a lot of Animal Crossing on the GameCube because I had a lot of time. And now that I don't have as much time on my hands, it's like a game like that is like, it's fun, and I'll play with it every once in a while, especially with my oldest son. But it's something that, you know, my village is suffering. As I said, it's not doing too hard right now. There's weeds everywhere. I need to go back and clean it up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, part of it for me is that I got distracted by a new Harvest Moon game that came out.
I was gonna bring that up because I knew there was a new one, and I was like, every time I see Everest, I'm like, I think of you.
It's called Story of Seasons now because of some trademark dispute that happened with the old translators of the series, but it's still the old school Harvest Moon series from Japan. And actually, this one is a remake of one of the old school games. So it's a remake of Friends of Mineral Town. So it's Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. I've been pouring many hours into that, as I do with all farming sims. It's honestly, the controls and are a little bit janky. It's not as polished as I'd prefer, but it's still one of those games, so I'm still going to play a bunch of it.
You know what surprises me is how engaging games based around chores are.
Yeah.
What is that?
Because that is what I was gonna say. You guys are all talking about the games that you're playing, and honestly, I'm thinking the game that I have been playing is how to force myself to do 2 loads of dishes every day, because that's all I ever do. We're not eating out, we're all at home, the kids aren't at school. I have to do 1 dishwasher load and 1 load of hand washing in the morning, and then I have to do that same thing at night. And if I do that, the whole house runs really smoothly. But if I let it go, then it's oh no, my system gets out of control. It's totally the same thing as playing a video game.
I was
but it's
hesitant.
in real life.
I was hesitant to talk to you about our next game, but it's called Dishwashing the Game.
No, too much dishwashing. No, I'm starting to
I agree with
sometimes
that.
enjoy it as a meditative, but I can imagine if all I had to do was press buttons. What's the name? Overcooked. We play Overcooked with the kids, and you have to wash dishes in that one. It's oh, fun, but I still avoid that chore even in Overcooked, and the kids are wash the dishes. I'm no, I'm flipping patties.
It's funny because one of my favorite games is Agricola, and that's basically Chores, the game. So, do you think it has something to do with a survival instinct that humans have? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
For me, I know why I really enjoy those chore-focused games is partially because they're kind of mindless. So I can watch television while I'm playing a farming sim because it doesn't take too much actual mental engagement. But also, I feel there is a sense of satisfaction to watering your crops and seeing them grow and taking care of your animals and upgrading your house and making money and starting a family and stuff in this very controlled world where those things are very easy and simple to do, that they just take a few button presses, that it doesn't take as much effort as actually doing the dishes, but you get that satisfied feeling of having accomplished something. You're I can see how my actions are affecting my life and improving things for me in this very small, limited, fake way, but it still feels nice.
That makes sense.
So confession time.
Herbert's new game idea, chores in space.
Space.
Stop bringing up space, Herbert.
I know. Actually, awesome.
I would play a farming sim set in space. Give me a Mars farming sim. I would be all over that.
We played a Mars simulation game.
Yes.
Yeah.
About spaceship maintenance game where you have to.
Zach says he named his Animal Crossing island Arzium.
Oh, very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, actually, I've heard of a game recently.
Sorry, Brenna, go ahead.
I heard of a game recently that I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's basically kind of a chores game in space, but you're a spaceship reclaimer, recycler. Basically, your whole job is to disassemble spaceships to recycle the parts from it. And that's the whole game, is you get a spaceship and you have to figure out the best way to disassemble it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That sounds way fun. Because then it's an efficiency thing too, It's ooh, if I get
exactly.
Salvaging this, then that sounds really fun. Fun.
Nice.
Yeah, Alyssa said she thinks it's the psychological satisfaction of organizing chaos.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially now, we're okay, let's do some games where we can actually control what happens.
Maybe that's part of it.
Joe
she
Wood
tried.
recommended I check out Innocent Life. I actually am aware of Innocent Life, although I never played it back in the day because I didn't play a lot of the PlayStation Harvest Moon games, but I have heard of it before.
Nice.
So confession time. This is a on our impromptu live podcast. This is a terrible moment that why I'm a terrible person. So Jeanette, I'll see like the stack. So my wife, her name is Jeanette, and she's amazing. I don't know why she married me, but I'll kind of like see the dishes. They pile up, and I'll think to myself, maybe I should do the dishes. And then I think I talk myself out of it because doing the dishes is terrible. And anytime I see her doing the dishes, I will go up to her like, oh, sorry, shoot, I should have done that for you. Or like as soon as she's done with it, it's like, oh, I thought about doing that. I'm sorry that I didn't do it. So the reason why I say that is to have this like, I at least let her know that there is an attempt to like, hey, I wanted to help do the dishes, but I didn't. So
all right.
So do I get points for wanting to and then deciding it wasn't worth it?
Yeah, you get a half a victory point, Craig.
Exactly. Like I'll get like
dishes are like 3-for-1 victory point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell her you said that.
Oh, she knows.
Oh,
Because she caught on. I did too much. She's like, why are you saying that? Why don't you just do the dishes? Like, oh, you know, like.
Because I'm lazy.
I'm lazy.
That's funny. Did we miss any comments?
Well, you know, there's a lot of conversation going on in the comments, which is great. People are talking about what they do on Animal Crossing and stuff. So far, I think we're kind of keeping up with it.
Nice. You know, lately, this actually the whole chores game thing, and the sense of satisfaction has got me thinking about game design, about like what players enjoy in game design, and for a long time I thought that complete control is what is something that players really enjoy, and so like the more control you have, the more enjoyable a game is. But I'm having like an awakening. I feel like that is not necessarily the case.
You're thinking like enough control, not complete
Some control. Yeah, but I think complete control, that doesn't necessarily lead to an enjoyable and satisfying experience.
Well, I have to say, I have to agree, because in life, I feel like I already have to like take responsibility for controlling all the things that I have in my life. So when I get a game where I have complete control, I tend to feel overwhelmed by it. And I'm like, wait, like I wanted to escape life. Like, give me some fun, give me some random elements, some things that are just like surprising, rather than, all right, sit down and do a really good job at this thing. Like,
yeah, I mean, there are different kinds of games, so you know, obviously, one kind of game might favor that over another, but you know, it's not the end-all game design philosophy. Were you gonna say something, Brenna?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there needs to be, for there to be that sense of satisfaction, there also has to be something of a sense of challenge. And I'm not one of those people who's super into like Dark Souls and ultra hard games for the sake of them being ultra hard. But like, there has to be some sort of obstacle to overcome to get that sense of satisfaction. So if you just have complete control over everything from the beginning, it can almost be kind of boring because there's nothing pushing back against you that you have to try to overcome, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's why in something like a farming sim, like the thing that you're pushing back against is almost kind of just sort of the world itself. It's your own like starting poverty. It's like you have to start building things up, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as fun if you started with an already like thriving farm, you know, where you've already got tons of crops and tons of money and you don't have to worry about anything. You need that sense of buildup to get the like satisfaction out of it.
well, there's also that element of like, you have to be struggling, but like, I find that I at least gravitate away from games where I have to do all the things. Like, I love when you plant a seed, but then naturally the programming just grows them at a certain timing, right? And you come back to check on them. So it's not like, and you do every little drop of water, and 3 days later, like, sometimes when you can just kind of automatically make a choice and then let it play out while you make other choices, that can kind of release some of that stress of like, oh, I have to be paying attention to all the things or else it will fail.
Right.
Well, that's one of the things that is pretty common in those kinds of games, is that you start out sort of having to pay attention to everything, always having to water all the crops yourself and everything. But then over time, as you build up your farm, you can gain things that will help you automate watering. Like in Stardew Valley, you can buy sprinklers, or in this new, in Friends of Mineral Town, you can get these harvest sprites. If you make friends with them, you can make them do your chores for you. That sort of stuff that you can like start to, as you build up, you can also start to automate some of those simpler chores so that you can focus on sort of a wider like management system, but not have to like micromanage everything. But like you start out slightly more hectic, having to take care of everything, but then you build up to a place where you can kind of step back a bit.
There's a lot of great comments on this topic. I'm going to move to a question. Let's see. I will ask, have you played a game of the near final master copy of Sleeping Gods? What are your thoughts after seeing it in pretty much the final form? So we did.
Yes.
We sat down and played with the near final components.
We did, and it was glorious. No, it was awesome to be able to play it.
It almost relates to the conversation we're having, because there was that feeling of like more relaxation. Like when it's in prototype form, you're always like, what are we missing? You know, what components are here that shouldn't be? What have we updated? What haven't we updated? And to just open it and be like, no, this is the game. Just play it. At least for me, I was like, oh, good. The experience feels right. Like it feels really nice. It's fun. It's not too overwhelming, but it's got a lot going on. Like, it's hard to get a sense for that when you've got, like, your messy table of all sorts of homemade stuff just, like, strewn across your house. And so it was nice. It was nice to play.
Yeah, like, right in the middle of development, you can sort of lose sight of some of the enjoyable parts of the game. Just because you're thinking so much about the design and you're not really, like, there to just enjoy it. So
Brandon's here. Hi, Brandon. Ryan's brother's back. Brandon is working with us on the Sleeping Gods soundtrack, so you'll get to know him a little bit better. And Chad wants to know our thoughts on the top 11 games on Board Game Geek. So if we run out of things to talk about, we can look at those top 11.
Nice. Let's see.
Chat about that.
I like Brass. That's a cute game.
I was thinking about Brass because whenever we play it, I think of you, Craig, because you introduced us.
So, there's a question from Ryan. He says, Ryan, you took quite some time and learned how to sculpt pieces for Empires of the Void 2 to your standard. Is there another board game related skill that you'd like to learn? To be honest, I would like to get better at sculpting. I feel like I have some limitations, and I still haven't quite, like, there are things I've been able to do, but I haven't been able to do it quite at the level that I want. For example, for Sleeping Gods, I used ZBrush and I sculpted a coin, and we sent it to the manufacturer to have them make it, and the sample came back and I really didn't like it. So, and then we ended up not using it, and we had to use a different method to make the coins. And I'm really happy with how the coins turned out, but I think I wish I could get better at that skill, for example.
Is that us?
I'm not sure.
Somebody's scraping. Is that me? Nope.
Oh.
Okay.
So.
Poltergeist in the microphones.
Yes, I hope that. So we were going to talk about...
Do you want to talk about...
Yeah.
Okay, so Gloomhaven, Confession, I have not played it. But Ryan has.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I haven't played it a lot. But it's very impressive.
Pandemic Legacy. Oh, have either of you played Gloomhaven, Craig or Brenna?
I have not.
I have not. I have always wanted to play it, but it feels so intimidating.
So it was interesting because when I bought it, I thought, okay, how long is this going to take to get the first game played? And it was a few hours, to like read the rule book, punch out all the tokens, set it all up, learn how to play. So I will say that I'm always surprised at games that break the rules. And I feel like Gloomhaven is a game that breaks the rules and is successful. Like, I never would have thought a game that had such a high barrier to entry could be so popular. And it doesn't have a huge barrier to entry. I mean, it's not like the most complex game ever, but it is, it's definitely a commitment to get into it. And so I think that's fascinating.
Okay. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. So that's the Pandemic Legacy
we played that,
right?
Yes.
Okay, so we sat down with Ryan's brother and played through a bunch of Pandemic Legacy. I really liked like the zombies that came. I just loved that it was a legacy game. We love Pandemic. We love Matt Leacock. It was really fun.
Oh yeah. Loved how the story unfolded.
On it when we were playing it. Like
we did not get through the whole thing, sadly.
But we played like five sessions, like bang, bang, bang.
Right
That's
in a
more
row.
than we ever play of any other game. So in the end, we didn't make it through the whole legacy game, but we got a lot of play out of it and loved it.
Yeah.
Aha! Brass Birmingham. So.
Oh, somebody mentioned Jaws. Get Jaws of the Lion.
Jaws of the Lion.
I do know that one's easier to get into, and people are.
Is that like a Gloomhaven expansion?
It is a. It's like a
standalone.
Yeah, it's a standalone spin-off game.
Nice.
And it's kind of it's in a smaller box, so it's not quite as intimidating. And
good choice for next steps from.
Yeah.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Brass Birmingham. So, Craig, go. Brenna, have you played Brass yet?
She did play it.
Yeah.
At some game night like a year ago, didn't we play?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Back when we used to have Red Raven game nights in person, we did play Brass Birmingham once, so I've played this one.
Yeah. That one is one of my favorite games.
Wait, is that the one with the bear and the... Or is that not... Okay. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really well done. It's a really fun game, and it's like, because I played it 3 times, and the first time was really intimidating during like the first like turn, but then it's a really like, once you see like how a full turn goes the first time, you slowly pick it up. It's a really like intimidating game with like all the components, but once you get around under your belt, like you totally get it. And I love just the aesthetics, the art, just like the gameplay is really well done. It's just a fun game. I love it.
When I first played it, because I had played the original Brass years ago, and that was a favorite. And when I first played it, I really was unsure about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think I still like the original, but after a few plays, I was convinced.
We have not gone back.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure we would, but we love it so much. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, I've only played it the once, but I remember that I enjoyed it. I don't remember that much details, but like I feel like with games like that, the important thing to me as someone who's not necessarily as hardcore of a board gamer is just that I always have something I can be working on that I feel like I'm like working towards and accomplishing stuff. And I felt like that game managed that. Like I feel like I always had stuff to do that felt like I was going somewhere with it. So that's an important thing for me in games like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you're not just walking through it blind. Like you can see where smart choices lie, and you can take next steps.
For sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Terraforming Mars. How many here have played Terraforming Mars?
We almost played Terraforming Mars at Origins a few years back.
3-for-1
We had set
point, Brenna.
We had it all set up, and like one morning that we were gonna play it, and then we didn't.
We did. I think we were too tired after Origins.
Yeah.
But I always enjoy playing that one. I think it's fun.
That's one I'm really interested in. I want to play it at some point, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I see it all pop up all the time, and I always want to play it, but I haven't touched it yet.
Yeah, it's a really satisfying sort of card engine building game. I always like games like that.
You can't help but love those shiny metallic cubes, component-wise. I mean, it's not like the most amazing experience with components, but they've done a good job of putting some nice components in there. And I think it's clever how you just use one type of component in different spaces on your player board to represent your different resources. So it is satisfying. It is a fun strategic game. The theme, of course, is fun. And there are some real innovations with mechanics and function that, yeah, I think it definitely deserves to be up at the top. Yeah, Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization, 2015. Ryan has never let me play that game.
That's not true.
Like,
it's too long, you're gonna hate it.
That's not true.
It used to be, back in the day when I had newborns, and I was like, sleep or Netflix, that's all I want.
I was right there with you. It's tough to play. But I've only played a full game 2 times. But it's fun. Oh, actually, I played on my phone a lot. I have an app that's great. I would say if you like Civ game, it's like a Civ card game. It's great. Yeah, if you're bored, get it on your phone. I
do like Civ
rules and stuff. It takes care of.
Sounds fun.
Okay, so Twilight Imperium, 4th edition.
I haven't played 4th edition.
I haven't played 4.
I haven't played any of them.
Always. It's just like my first. There's the poltergeist again.
I'm having little sound issues.
Having some sound issues. Yeah. TI.
Yeah. That was one of the games that, honestly, back in the day, that game, 3rd edition, sort of introduced me to giant production games.
Yeah.
I had never seen a game or bought a game that was like that had so much stuff in it and was so huge.
And long.
It sort of introduced me to the idea of that kind of game.
Let's see if someone else, have you played Everdell?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, we enjoy Everdell.
What do you guys think?
I have not.
Yep.
It's a great time.
I picture Brenna liking it.
I think,
maybe next.
You know
maybe
what?
next time we're allowed to get together for gaming, we'll.
That's one we should
play
bring.
Everdell.
Yeah, it's a fantastic production for art and design and everything. It's just it's a very accessible experience too. So.
I do think the box looks pretty. I've seen the box before.
Yes.
Artwork in the box is really, and all the components are really cool for that game.
In fact, the art was so great that we had the artist do a game for us. That's not out yet.
Well, there you go.
It's not out yet, but yeah, Andrew Bosley.
We were just talking about him, so yeah, one of our upcoming games has some Andrew Bosley art. In a little bit different vein, it's still got the heroic characters, but they're not animals, they're knights, and they're pretty hardcore. They're pretty awesome.
And they're cute.
And they're cute, knight. They've got whiskers. Herbert says, can we get the return of the board game design tips segment for old time's sake and bonus points for doing the theme song?
Oh, man.
Brenna!
I can do the theme song if we do that.
Yeah.
Was that the tip of the week? Come on. Was that the Brenna's like,
well, are we
not feeling it.
If we're gonna do it, I can do the theme song, but I'm not gonna do the theme song if we don't have a tip.
Do you have a tip of the week?
Oh. Yes, I have a tip.
Okay, Brenna.
Okay.
While you're ahead.
It's the tip of the week.
Okay, so the tip of the week is when you're designing a game, do not get too far along in the design without testing it with other people. So this is what happened this year. I designed a game, and because we're stuck at home, Mallory and I played it a lot. And
A lot.
A lot. And we couldn't get other players to play it. And we got really far along, and it was going pretty well. And then I had other players play it, and all sorts of issues came up that were not apparent. It was not the same game. So I think it's important to test the game with as many people as possible early. And obviously we're in circumstances where that's difficult, and so that's one reason why that happened.
Early, obviously we understand that all designers are probably, I shouldn't say all, that's never true, but so many creative types I find are the types that like to get pretty far along with an idea before they hold it up to other people and say, hey, give me some criticism, I'm ready. But yeah, as early as you can stomach it.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Because, this has happened a couple times for a bunch of my designs. What happens is, if you play with the same group, the group gets they play it with a kind of a group think, where it works with that group, and they always do the same sort of things. And then you get a new group, and they totally approach it in a different way. And in unexpected ways that bring out so many new problems. So you can avoid some pain by trying to play it with more people. I like your tip there, Craig.
Yes, please. And maybe put deodorant on,
Oh boy.
That's good too.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
Nice tip of the
For
week.
sure.
Although to go along with that, I'm going to do a recap on probably something Ryan's talked about a lot before. And that's, when you get a game and you realize it's not working, do not be attached to it so much that you will not change it. Because if you've invested a bunch of time, like we are going through it right now, and we've practiced this process enough that we're excited about the changes we're having to make to this game. But you gotta let go of the old. I used to be really bad at that. I'm like, no, I just got attached to the idea. And now Ryan's using totally different mechanics and changing everything around. So let it go. If it's not working, there'll be something else that comes along.
It's a lot harder to do that in video game development, I will say that. It's much easier for us to do that.
Yeah. That's funny. Funny. Oh yeah, save your art files. That's a good tip too.
Oh,
Yes, that's a good tip.
Maybe I should do that. We'll see.
That's the second time that Chad has saved you.
Save. Yeah. There was one time where I was working on a game, and I hadn't backed it up in weeks, and the hard drive died. And
Oh,
so
no.
I lost weeks of work. And it was almost enough to make me quit the game forever. And I think had it been even a little bit more time that I had lost, I probably would have just given up and said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm not doing 3 weeks again. I already did those 3 weeks. I'm not doing that again." It's a real motivation killer.
Yeah, for sure.
I do all my composing on paper with pencil. I don't sit down with a MIDI keyboard and go straight into Finale or something. I still just sit down with paper scratches and just write. And there have been times where I've lost all the pages. I'm like, where is that? We've even recorded it and I can't find it. And actually, even on a couple of tracks for Sleeping Gods, that has happened. And I'm like, I can't find it. I cannot find it. That whole piece is gone. And it's actually gotten me better results. When I finally just let go of it and say, okay, I guess I have to write a new piece, I actually get some better stuff out of it. So you can
That's
embrace the
interesting.
mistakes, you can embrace the tragedies and just be like, okay, moving on.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I obsessively save and archive all of my writing. So I've got everything I've ever written since high school in a cloud server somewhere. Cannot lose it.
Do you ever go back through and read it, and what kinds of feelings and inspiration do you get from looking back at much older writing?
I actually did do that just recently. Actually, I was going through a bunch of my old stuff. And it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of things that I even straight up forgot that I had written. Like, especially short stories. I'll be like going through my folders and I'm like, what is this? And I reread it and I'm like, it's funny because it's like almost like I'm experiencing it new, but also I'm the original writer and I know myself so well that I'm reading it and I'm like, this is so me, typical Brenna. This is hilarious. But I think, yeah, the interesting thing about reading my old work is just that, yeah, seeing those things that I still do in my current work, like seeing the connections there, and then also seeing how some things have evolved to where I like maybe dealing with similar themes, but in a completely different way now. And I don't feel like it like necessarily gives me any immediate inspiration or like anything always that I necessarily want to go back to, but although I actually do tend to dwell on similar ideas for years and years and years, and then sometimes they evolve into something else. But mostly it's just, I think, vaguely interesting to go back through my past work and see the stuff that I've done before.
Yeah, it can be fun to see like how you've changed.
Yeah.
Cool.
Herbert says, awesome to see Ryan in the game designers documentary. You must have really watched that.
I know, I'm in
because
there
Ryan's
for...
in like this much of it, so wow.
I'm like 5 seconds. So it's funny, I sat down to watch it with my daughter, and we're sitting there watching it. She had no idea I was in it. And we're watching it, you know, and like, suddenly I show up for about 5 seconds. I say like one line. And she turns around, she's like, what the? This like huge look of surprise in her face. It was awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, cool documentary.
Yeah.
Fun watch if you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about gonna wind it up.
Where's this documentary? Yeah, it's
Can
on.
you
get it on Prime and stuff? Like, where did Eric?
I can't remember. It's on various streaming services, and it's just called The Game Designers.
Mm-hmm.
So you should look it up, and you can probably find it. I think it's on. I don't want to say.
Oh yeah, Prime Video, and Board Game Geek is kind of producing. Board Game Geek is involved in it. So yeah.
Still haven't heard your thoughts on Scythe.
Ooh, Scythe.
Scythe is a game that we play not super regularly, but I think it's really great. Actually, we played it with my son a few months ago, and it was shocking, like how quickly he picked it up and how much he enjoyed it and got into the theme. It was a very successful play, so I think it's great. I love how it looks too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, art is amazing.
Scythe was one of the first like hardcore hobby board games I ever played. Like pretty shortly after I started working with Red Raven, we played it at the office because Ryan got his Kickstarter copy, and so that was definitely an interesting introduction to, I think, the more serious hobby games. I enjoyed it.
Wait,
back when we played it. It's been a while now.
Was that you and Craig and like was that when Craig was in the office with us?
Yeah.
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 It was the three of us.
Yeah.
Back in the attic office.
The attic.
Yeah, we played it. It was fun. Awesome.
Nice. Easily my favorite game, says chat. I mean, it's worthy of it.
There's another board game. Herbert says there's another board game documentary called The Game Masters that is also very good. And I have seen it advertised, but I haven't watched it yet. So we'll have to check that out. I have not played Rise of Fenris. So, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And
thanks for your patience at the beginning, those of you who tried to watch in the first 20 minutes while we figured this whole thing out. Yeah. But hopefully we can do this soon. We can do this again soon.
For sure. For the old school podcast fans, should we close this out right?
Of course.
Yes.
Nevermore.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Are we dead?
end.
The end.